GSP sets a global clash in motion. Indonesia says the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, has now accepted an invitation to the G20 summit in Bali. That meeting is in mid-November, so it is just impossible to know where things in Ukraine will stand by then. But the Biden White House is preparing for the long haul and says now is not the time to be rolling out the welcome mat for Vladimir Putin.
No, he absolutely shouldn't be. I mean, he has isolated Russia by his own actions, and he should continue to be isolated by the international community. It's inappropriate, I think, for the entire international community to keep treating Russia as if things are normal, because it's not.
Joining our conversation is Ewald Alder. He's the president of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, also the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. Ambassador, great to see you at this moment. So what should the Biden White House do? Does the president boycott the G20? Does the president go but just avoid Vladimir Putin? Does he go and harangue Vladimir Putin at every opportunity? What are the options?
Well, it's a hard case. Of course, President Biden has called for the ouster of Vladimir Putin from the G20 and indeed of Russia from the G20 as part of the policy to isolate the country. That is not going to happen. He has then said that the Ukrainians ought to be invited, and that's still something that's on the table. But clearly, he will go and should go, in my mind, and have that meeting and really use the meeting to make clear that there are rules in the international order that need to be abided by, and that Vladimir Putin is isolated in having defied those rules. He invaded a country that did not pose a threat to Russia without being provoked in any way, and making that clear and getting as many countries in the G20 to back that up, even as if Putin is there, is probably the best way to make clear that the United States stands with those who still abide by the rules, even against those who do no longer do so.
And obviously, the situation in Ukraine come the time of the G20, which is mid-November, will dictate a lot of the specifics of the day-to-day and any personal interactions. We don't know what it's going to look like, but listen here, the UK Defense Secretary says, don't rule this out.
I think it's certainly the case that Putin, having failed in nearly all his objectives, may seek to consolidate what he's got, sort of fortify and dig in, as he did in 2014, and just be a sort of cancerous growth within the country of Ukraine, and make it very hard for people to move them out of those fortified positions.
Do you see that as a likely scenario? The Russian gains have been plotting, but they are making advances, Ambassador, in the east and in the south. It was 8 years ago this war started. Putin took Crimea. He has the separatist region in Donetsk and Luhansk. Is it possible he takes territory, declares victory, and then how will the West have the resolve to hang in for years to force him out?
I think that is one of the plausible possibilities. Of course, his gains are minimal compared to where he was before this war, because he didn't achieve in his effort to take over Kyiv or to oust the government. The real question, I think, is, are the Ukrainians going to be satisfied with this? And so far, they made very clear that they wouldn't be. And as long as the Ukrainians are saying, no, we want you out of Ukraine, we have now indicated we will back them up. I mean, the president has called for $33 billion more in aid, $20 billion for military and security assistance, and we're not alone. A lot of other countries are now sending in heavy weapons, not just to help Ukraine defend itself against the onslaught in the east, but actually to turn the tide of war and to push the Russians out. So Russia may try to take the territory and keep it. They won't find a population that is going to welcome them there, and the Ukrainians are going to continue to fight to push them out. So I don't think this war is going to be over anytime soon, unless the Russians break through or the Ukrainians break through, which at the moment doesn't seem to be very likely.
And so if we are in for the long haul here, put your NATO hat on, your former NATO hat on for a second. I just want to read this. NATO fighter jets stationed in both the Baltic and Black Sea regions scrambled multiple times over the last 4 days to track and intercept Russian aircraft near Alliance airspace, according to a statement posted by NATO's Allied Air Command. What are the conversations in NATO about just the risks? The longer this goes on, the more Russian planes are in the air near NATO airspace. Dangerous.
It is very dangerous. I mean, a war in Europe is very dangerous, and that's what we're facing here. And there's the constant worry about escalation, and escalation can happen in one of two ways. One, we cross a line that would lead to a direct confrontation, military confrontation between Russian and NATO forces, or more likely, the Russians cross the line. either by targeting our resupply of the Ukrainians on NATO territory, or indeed in the airspace of NATO territory, whether that's in the Baltic Sea or, frankly, a whole variety of other places that is possible. And we lack the kind of communication that we used to have, where our militaries would on a regular basis talk to each other. The Russians aren't particularly receptive to having that conversation. So this is ripe for the possibility of a war by miscalculation. I think NATO is looking at ways, how do we avoid getting dragged into a conflict that we don't want at this time to be dragged into, but at the same time make clear to the Russians that if they cross a line, the consequence is going to be severe. That's the discussion that's happening in Brussels today, and will continue for as long as this war continues.
As long as this war continues. Ambassador Golder, as long as it does. We appreciate your insights, sir. We'll talk again. Thank you.
My pleasure.